Good afternoon. I'm Karen Gall-Mills, Executive Director of Cuyahoga Arts and Culture and a proud member of the City Club of Cleveland. It's a pleasure to be here today to introduce you to Dennis Scholl, Vice President of Arts for the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. So why am I standing here to do this introduction today? Well, as many of you know, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is the public funder for our arts and culture community here in Cleveland. And with our grant making, we try to ensure that the terrific arts and culture assets of our region are connected to the community in meaningful ways. When voters approved this resource back in 2006, they were expressing their desire to connect to the great things that arts and culture provide to communities: creativity, employment, and the opportunities for learning and engagement that enrich our quality of life. And as we at Cuyahoga Arts and Culture explored the world of community-centered arts grant-making, all roads led to Dennis and the Knight Foundation. His perspective has informed our work, as we hope it will now inform yours. The Knight Foundation's mission is dedicated to creating informed and engaged communities. And for the arts program, this means investing in programs and projects that engage communities around traditional and emerging art forms in inventive ways. You likely know their work, including the wonderful Random Acts of Culture, the Knight Arts Challenge, a program that CAC blatantly appropriated when we built our Creative Culture Grants program, and their leadership with the National Art Place Initiative. Dennis is at the center of all of these innovations. Renaissance man is probably the most important way to describe our speaker today. An attorney, CPA, a fellow at Harvard, a renowned art collector, and now a vintner. Ask him about that. His is a leading voice for change in the arts and culture world, and we are so pleased that he is here to share his perspective with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Scholl.
Well, thank you to the Cleveland City Club and to Dan and his team. It was okay until he walked me down the hall back there and showed me who had spoken here, and then I got kind of like freaked out. So that was not a good moment, and he was enjoying it too. He was like torturing me. And I want to thank Karen, although I got to say that she lied to me. She said, come to Cleveland, talk to a couple of friends of mine. I really want them to hear what you're doing. So this does not look like a handful of people like you promised. But I want to talk today a little bit about some of the new art ideas that I'm seeing that inspire, engage, and bind. And they do it to communities. So I've been at the Knight Foundation for about 5 years. Before that, I had spent about 15 years as a venture capitalist, and before that, 15 years as a CPA and an attorney. And during that period, like many of you in the room today, I had been giving away my own money for 30 years as a patron. And I thought by joining Knight, I'd see what it was like to give away somebody else's money. It's fun, by the way. When I came to the foundation, I assumed that the venture capital skills that I had developed would translate very easily into the philanthropic world. You know, as a venture capitalist, we look at a lot of ideas. We choose a few. We use our analytical skills to determine which are the best ideas, which projects have the best chance to succeed. But I found out almost immediately that the world of venture capital and the world of arts philanthropy are quite different, and I kind of found out the hard way. So collaboration, as many of the people here know, is a fact of life in the business world. And it's much more difficult to implement in the art world. So first I said, you know, being from the venture capital world, I have the money, I'll make them collaborate. Until there's some people from the nonprofit world in here, because that lasted about 10 seconds. Then I said, and this wasn't easy for me, I said, oh, I'll entice them to collaborate. I'll invite them to collaborate. So I said, please, I put a pile of money in the table, big table like this, and guys at either end. I said, please, 2 arts organizations I thought would be awesome collaborators. I said, please collaborate. And so they came from either side of the table, they moved to the money, they chomped away at it for about 6 or 8 months until it was gone, and then they retreated to their respective corners. So my collaboration experience in the arts has not been as successful as I would have hoped. I have to say, up here, it's a little better. I see that in places like Cleveland and Akron and Detroit, where I work a lot. But why do we put our philanthropic dollars into the arts? Well, this is something that people don't say very often, but the bottom line is people generally, and I don't mean the cognoscenti, people generally love the arts. Now, we needed to have something more empirical than that at the Knight Foundation. It's a pretty hardcore empirical evidence place. We needed to know, how do the arts inspire people? How does it bind them to their community? But I know that now because we commissioned a study with our partners at the Gallup organization. And over a 3-year period, Knight Foundation asked in 26 different communities, all where the Knight brothers happened to own the newspapers at one point or another, what attaches you to your community? What makes you want to be there? And here are the results. And what we found, we call this, by the way, the soul of the community. But in the office, we simply call it the soul poll. And what we found is that the primary thing that binds people to their community are social offerings, primarily arts and culture. We asked 43,000 people the first year that question, and that's the answer we got in every single of the 26 communities. So we thought, that can't be right. And we did it a second year, and we got the same answer. We said, that can't be right. We did it a third year. We got the same answer over and over again. What's the most important thing to bind people to their community? Social offerings, primarily arts and culture. What's the second thing? How open a community is, how open a community feels. And what's the third thing? Aesthetics. How do you make your community a better place to live? How do you make your community a better place aesthetically to live? I checked. I was told there are no elected officials here, so I'll let you in on a little secret. The oft-quoted phrase of civic engagement lasts every single time, every single community, every single year. So if you're a culture nut, this is your moment, and this is the evidence to lead you to it. And there is a website called soulofthecommunity.org you can check out. So people love the arts, and it attaches them to their community. And knowing this, I went out with my philanthropic hat on, looking for new art ideas to fund, and I said, just as I would as a venture capitalist, what's the big idea? And at the Knight Foundation, as Karen said, the overall mission is to help nurture and create informed and engaged communities. So I said, well, how can the arts do that? And the first big idea I came across is the quantum shift in how people engage versus, let's say, 20 years ago. I'll call it our way, and those of you who have a little gravitas or gray hair, you know who you are. Our way and their way. And those of you that are here today, raise your hand who have never been here before, thank you. You're the their way people. Our way, sage on stage. Their way, team-based learning collaboratively. Our way, I play, you listen. Their way, interactive across ages learning. Because what did they know that we don't know? No one cares how old you are on the internet. Our way, individual experience. That guy on the left is a sad-looking dude, by the way. We got to change that slide. It makes me depressed. New way, shared experience. What's driving this change? Much of it is about access to information. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the web. It's coming from technology. The separation between old and new is primarily by age, and it's primarily technological. I was speaking recently on a panel at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and I learned how many hours a week a 14-year-old spends with digital media. How many do you think? 10? 20 hours? 30 hours? 53 hours a week. 53 hours a week. What? Now, here's where I was getting in trouble with this speech. Before I go any further, I want to make it clear to everybody here, I am not advocating the replacement of the live experience with the digital experience. There is nothing like going to see Picasso's Guernica. There's nothing like hearing Franz conduct the Cleveland Orchestra. And I live in Miami, so I get to see him a lot now, which is pretty cool. But these dudes are online 53 hours a week. You can't ignore 53 hours a week. Now, how did that happen? Well, here's how I learned. And I remember the proud look on my parents' face when they bought me the leading educational technological tool of our time. Y'all don't know what a World Book is. It's cool. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Okay? And how exciting it was that once a year, we got that incredible download of information called the yearbook. Now, here's how they learn. So the only point I'm trying to make is that the world has changed dramatically. And I began to think about, what does this mean to the art world? What is it going to mean to arts organizations? How are they going to remain relevant? Was anyone doing this already? And so I looked, as I often do, to one of the smartest guys in the art world. He's a good friend, and of course he gets it. His name is Sir Nicholas Sirota. We used to call him Nick until he got knighted. Now it's Sir Nicholas, director of the Tate. And he recently said the following: we need to provide places for individuals and groups to exchange skills, expertise, and ideas. We need spaces for reflection and the intimate engagement with works of art. But we also need the friction and energy generated by the presentation of contested views and values. No more sage on stage. That party has left the building. But what does the new arts audience want? They just want one thing. They want to curate their own experience. So I thought to myself, well, who's doing that? And I found it in my own backyard, our backyard actually, where I spend the summers at the Aspen Art Museum, where I was a board member for 5 years. And for those of you listening on the radio, I'm going to show a photograph now. It's a picture of me sitting on a hippopotamus made of mud, reading the Sunday paper, and blowing a whistle each time I read something in the paper that concerned me. It's a work by a duo artist team of Alora and Calzadilla. They were our U.S. representatives to the Venice Biennale approximately 3 years ago, 2 years ago maybe. And it's part of a show that we had at the Aspen Art Museum called Restless Empathy. Everyone in the community, you'll hear the word everyone a lot today, everyone in the community was invited to participate in the work by sitting on top of the hippo for an hour, or 5 hours, or 10 hours. It's a very hard hippo. I don't remember anything more, don't recommend anything more than an hour. I was instructed to read my paper, blow my whistle, and not make eye contact with the viewers. I was part of the work. Even the wall text included me as part of the work. What does it say here? It's mud, whistle, daily newspaper, live person. That was me. Feeling pretty good about that. I was certainly able to curate my own experience. But this isn't the only piece like this that's floating around out there. Some of you may know the Marina Abramovic show at MoMA. Visitors queued for hours to have an opportunity to sit across from her and stare at her for up to 30 minutes while she stared back. Curator said, this isn't going to work. Marina just folded her arms and said, look, I'm Marina Abramovic, you're not, this is what we're doing. A whole social culture sprung up amongst the people that were waiting in line even. You didn't have to be part of the piece, you're just waiting in line. Another piece at her show, there was the chance to squeeze between a naked man and a naked woman in a narrow doorway. I curated myself out of that one. But I can't believe I'm saying thousands of people squeezed through. The Brazilian artist, Ravani Neuenschweier, one of my favorite artists right now, had a piece at the new museum in which a visitor could come to the museum and sit with a police sketch artist and describe a loved one. And at the end of that session, you don't get to take it home like a tchotchke. It goes up on the wall and becomes part of the show. This is art that connects you as an institution to your audience. So the artists get it. I mean, let's face it, the artists always get it. They're always miles ahead of us. But do the institutions get it? Well, some do. Right down the road from here, the Wexner Museum answered the engagement question through the web. It opened a show a couple years ago. Many of you saw it, of LA artist Mark Bradford. Had the most engaging microsite I've ever seen for a museum show. For those of you listening, it's called PinocchioIsOnFire.org. And so what if you can't be there? You can still be engaged. Just watch a couple seconds of this.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Speaking at the City Club, I wasn't sure if that was appropriate. I don't know.
All right, all right, all right. Here we go. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. All right, all right, all right. Here we go. All right, all right, all right. I'm really excited about the inspiration.
Scorched Earth is, yeah, that came from out of Tulsa. There was something that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 20s that, Scorched Earth is the Mark Bradford
We're gonna
ballad.
flip a dime, don't we?
Detritus from the streets,
Find a dime
and
somewhere, right?
string and twine from Home Depot.
So when I saw this, I absolutely flipped out. I immediately You don't get a lot of clarity in this job because things come at you like a fire hose, but I immediately saw and began to fund in various night communities digitization projects for visual and performing arts organizations in night cities. The Akron Art Museum, which has put in, we were talking last night, something like 80% of their collection has been digitized at this point. The New Beckler Museum in Charlotte, the Wolfsonian Museum, and the New World Symphony in Miami all have new digital initiatives that Knight has funded. Who else is doing something like this? Anyone in here know? So I spent the morning at the CMA, and all I did was do this. That thing is amazing. It's the coolest thing. You know, 40 feet, only half of it was working. I got to go on record as saying that. Micro tile screen, largest in the US, access to images of over 3,500 objects. What does it let you do? It lets you shape your own tour. It lets you take home your own tour. It lets you curate your own experience. That's what people want. And for museums, it can't just be about objects in a white box. Here's another example of a dynamic space from somewhere that's drawing people in. Who wouldn't want to come to this place? Who wouldn't want to come to this place, okay, and see what's up? So this is the kind of forward-thinking audience outreach that's going on, and it's going on right in your own backyard. So I feel that this idea, finding a way to allow the visitor to curate their own experience, is going to be the most important issue for arts organizations over the next decade. But let's face it, that's for the people that are interested enough to be engaged. What do we do about everybody else? The unengaged, the completely unengaged, we all feel the apathy out there. Cleveland has incredible legacy anchor cultural institutions, but it's also lost some. And I fear that American symphonies, ballets, operas, museums have been pretty slow to move away from the model of I play, you listen, I dance, you watch. In essence, a model of telling us to take it or leave it. Well, unfortunately, what's happening is we're leaving it. We're leaving it in droves. Attendance at the SOB, can you say SOBs on the radio? Sorry. Attendance at the SOB, it's not my phrase, it's symphony, opera, ballet. Don't get your mind out of the gutter. Take a look at this statistic. The percentage of adults going to classical music, dramatic theater, ballet, and other dance has declined in each annual survey since 1982. Or not. Well, you'll have to listen to me then. So it looks like everything is going down. That's not so good. So the question is, by the way, did anything go up in the survey? And the answer is yes. Participation in photography, participation in filmmaking, primarily because of the availability of these inexpensive digital tools. That's the word digital again. What will the symphony, what will the opera, what will the ballet do about it? Can these great classical genres regain their audiences? Can they find a way to engage with their audiences? How do I get the work in front of the community if I can't get the community to come to the Symphony Hall? So at the Knight Foundation, we're trying something, and many of you have heard about it. It's called Random Acts of Culture, and the idea is to get these venerable arts institutions, and more importantly, the artists themselves, out of the Symphony Hall and into the streets. And so at this point in time, I had hoped to show you a video, but it appears that I'm going to show you a video, because that's great. So, it's about 3 minutes.
Je peux vous l'entendre, Seigneur, Seigneur, car avec les soldats, les spectateurs peuvent s'entendre pour le plaisir, rigoler comme le cirque est plein, c'est jour de fête, le cirque est plein, dit l'automne. Les spectateurs peuvent s'entendre pour les spectateurs, c'est un tel en grand fracas. Allô?
Allô?
En garde!
En garde!
Allô?
Allô?
Allô? Songe combattant, et que l'amour t'attend, toréador,
That's my wife back there. It cost me $300 in shoes that day. These are them. I don't pretend to be able to draw a straight line from seeing opera in the mall to buying a ticket for La Traviata or Mahler. I get this abuse in the Q&A all the time, so I try to cut it off at the pass. But we've got to start somewhere. We've got to reintroduce the classics in an entry-level way, in a surprising way, in a subversive way to the community, and dare I say, in a fun way. You know, the classics can be not fun sometimes. We've done over 1,250 random acts of culture so far. We had planned on only doing 1,000, but our performing partners had gotten such an outpouring of support from their communities that they just kept going. And we're thrilled about that. Locally, I want to give a shout out to our friends at the Akron Symphony Orchestra who did a great job of bringing this idea to their community over 100 times. And they did a great, great job. So thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Now, it's not just about the 100 people that saw it at the mall, although we did it 6 times that day and presented it to about 1,000 people until the fire marshal threw us out. But the real payoff is putting them on the web. We did another one with our friends in Philadelphia, and we put it on the web. The Opera Philadelphia organization has 8.2 million views on YouTube. This is opera, guys. This ain't Justin Bieber, okay? And the other thing is, in the video, did you see the immediate reaction of the people present? We had 2 cameras shooting this, but how many people had their camera phones out and were taking it? By the time we go back and edit the film and all that, they're already up on the web by people just passerbys. What are they doing? Curating their own experience. You got to invite them to the party. I don't have the answers today, and I think that's clear, but the old model is crashing down around us. So we've got to try with outreach, digital strategies, and engagement. I keep talking about digital, and it's because that you look at the NEA surveys that are out there. There's a great one called Audience 2.0. They talked to about 18,000 people, and here's what they learned. People who participate in the arts through electronic media are nearly 3 times as likely to attend a live benchmark event as somebody who doesn't participate in electronic media. And they attend twice as many art events on average and in a greater variety of live art forms. Media-based arts participation appears to encourage rather than replace live arts attendance. For many legacy organizations, as I travel around the country, they don't believe me. They don't believe the NEA. It's a revelation. I don't know why. A recent study just showed that we now look at some kind of a screen. Personally, we look at some kind of screen an average of 9 hours and 41 minutes a day. So you have to meet your audience where they're going, not where they used to be. Our fortune came from the newspaper business, so we know a lot about this. I'm going to give you another idea we put in play in a big way. Studies show that a significant percentage of audiences that go see professionals are amateurs. So you have to make the practice of art and the execution of artistic ideas available to everyone. How many people here call themselves artists? Yeah, not so many. I don't call myself an artist. I mean, why not? I mean, I draw a little bit badly, but I do it. I make short films, I write, but I don't think of myself as an artist. Why is that? Do you sing in the choir? Do you sew a quilt? You're an artist. Listen, you guys call yourself golfers and tennis players, and when you come down to Miami, I've seen some of you play. Call yourself an artist. But how do we get people to define themselves as an artist? So in Miami, Philadelphia, and Detroit, and ripped off by Karen in Cleveland, happy with that, we've got this contest called the Night Arts Challenge. We go to everybody in the community, 3 simple rules. Your idea must be about art, it must take place in or benefit your community, and if we fund you, you have to find matching money. Anyone in the community can enter. No 5 years audited financial statements, no 501c3. You can be an individual, you can be a small collective, you can be a corporation, you can be a nonprofit. But we figured out that the best ideas don't necessarily emanate out of 501c3s. Eureka. We've received 13,300 ideas so far. And I know because I've read every single one of them. And in the first 6 years of the contest, we funded 316 ideas for over $30 million. What happens to the community when you invite anyone to seek philanthropic arts funding? Well, in Detroit, last month, we had Detroit Free Press columnist Rochelle Riley come to our KAC Winners Contest. And she was so moved that she wrote, "I walked into the Fillmore Detroit Theater Tuesday night and met Detroit's soul. The city's soul is not made of dollars and companies. It lies in the creativity and passion and genius that has fueled art and the business of art. It lies in a fierce persistence to share spirit. We know the city's troubles, but we better not forget its soul. Souls lift the cities, and that's how the healing begins." So that's what the Night Arts Challenge is all about. And Karen has started to implement a very similar style of the contest right here in Cleveland with her Creative Culture Grants Program, which, like the KAC, is drawing a lot of attention nationally. I mean, everybody is looking at this, and, you know, letting our communities help us choose just enhances the opportunity to engage them. I have a couple other things I'll talk about in the Q&A, but my time is running out. But I want to challenge everybody here to try to answer a question today. And the question simply is, how do we create an environment of change in the arts? You can't fear failure. And I admit, historically, arts philanthropy has played it safe. Maybe that's why I've had such a good time doing this, because I don't pay attention to the history so much. Arts organizations need an organizational structure, and for many of you that are here today that are on boards, you need a board that is dedicated to change. You need an organization that is dynamic, not static. You need, frankly, a brave organization to be an arts organization these days. Because I know a brave organization will be successful in dealing with these kinds of issues that we're discussing here today. A lot of these ideas we've talked about won't work. And in fact, some of the ones we've tried and haven't worked, I just don't talk about them. We just bury them in the backyard somewhere. But you have to be prepared for failure. You have to be trying things. You have to be brave. And I am fortunate, by being at Knight, to be in a place which encourages experimentation and risk. It encourages us to take risks. But the venture capitalist in me knows that if only a few of these ideas work that we've talked about today, we'll have moved arts organizations in our communities to a richer, more interactive relationship with their stakeholders. Thank you. On the button.
Thank you, Dennis, for those provocative and wonderful remarks. You've given us all great things to think about. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring Dennis Scholl, Vice President of Arts for the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. We will return to our speaker momentarily for the traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate questions for our speaker now and remind you that your question should be brief and to the point. And a question is not, can I get a grant for, ... Okay?
Open like a grant maker.
We welcome all of you here and those joining us via broadcast on WVIZ PBS, 90.3 WCPN, and 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, WTAM, or one of our many broadcast partners across the country. Broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC, and our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. Next Friday, November 1st, the City Club welcomes John Campbell, Executive Director of Waterfront Toronto, who will discuss the success of Toronto's lakefront redevelopment. For more information about upcoming forums, to make a reservation, to order a CD or a DVD of the City Club's programs, please refer to their website, www.cityclub.org. We welcome guests today at tables hosted by the Cleveland International Film Festival, the Cleveland Orchestra, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, Dance Cleveland, the Knight Foundation, and Land Studio. Thank you for your support. And as was mentioned before, today is the Lucille D. and Robert Hayes Grease Forum on Cultural Arts, made possible by a generous gift from Bob Grease and Ellen Grease Cole in memory of their parents. Bob is here with us today at the head table. Will you stand to be recognized, please? Now we'll return to Dennis for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. And holding the microphone today, we have Program Director Carrie Miller over on that side and Development Manager Mike Cromaldi over on that side. First question, please.
Dennis, thank you very much for, way in the back here, for being our sage on stage. You did a great job. You touched on, at the very end, you touched on something that I think is critically important here, and that's the role of the board. Many of the organizations that you've mentioned here in Cleveland have boards that I would guess the average age is probably not, is more on the sage on stage side than the engaged side. Can you give us some examples of organizations that have done a good job of getting their boards to be a little bit more willing to accept change?
I get this question quite a bit, and I think the most important thing that you can do as a board is put a 27-year-old on your board. Because I would submit to you, if I ask how many people here are on boards, raise your hand. How many of your boards have 27-year? Yeah, you know. I mean, it's find a way. This digital, it's not just because we're old and they're young. We have been part of an amazing moment where the digital divide has been created, and it's just something that will flow through our society, and in 30 or 40 years from now, it won't matter as such, but it matters now. And I am so happy that I have mentors that are 3 decades younger than me. And so it isn't put them on the board because they're young, put them on the board because they're smarter than you about a lot of stuff that matters for your organization. And if they can't pay dues, find another way to do it. I hear that a lot. Well, they can't pay dues, we can't have it. You know, there are always people who contribute mightily to boards that can't pay dues, and you find a way to keep them on your board. Dues paying is a reason to be on a board. It is not the only reason. So I see it happening. There are people starting to add, 27-year-olds or technologists or people that understand social media better than, And when I'm on a board, I ask that they bring that person to the meeting and let them present, because it's always an epiphany. So there are organizations out there doing that, but there are long-standing barriers to doing it, and people are wrong to not do it.
You mentioned with a certain amount of concern the fact that the average teenager, I believe, spends something over 40 hours every week on the web. I wonder to what extent that reflects the fact that the funding for public schools has been significantly reduced, and one of the casualties of those reduced funds is the fact that many public schools no longer have arts programs, no longer teach the fine arts.
Yeah.
And what, if anything, can your foundation, which has so many innovative ideas, produce to try to reverse that trend, or lower that 53%, at the same time get many more students involved in the arts?
Yeah. It's a good news, bad news scenario, I believe. The bad news is arts education in our public schools is almost an oxymoron. It's getting close, but there's still some great innovative programs in certain situations. The good news is that the kids that are in school aren't learning from school about the things that they're interested in. If you want to learn how to do a guitar riff, you can go on YouTube and there's 17 different opportunities to learn how to do a guitar riff or paint or things like that. So the digital opportunity has made learning, not teaching, but learning, a significantly different idea. As I said in the talk, nobody cares how old you are on the internet. If I want to know how to do something and you know how to do it, that's all I care about. So you're seeing students who aren't getting the opportunity to have arts education moving into other places, going other places to glean that kind of information. Are they going to be schooled in the historic Western European canon? They're probably not. And I don't know that that's such a bad thing given what the demography of our country is and how rapidly it's changing. So I think we have to not necessarily assume that schools will be the place where young people get the most of their arts learning.
What words of encouragement do you have or wisdom about, in light of this need to collaborate, the encouragement to collaborate, a kind of fear among certain individuals that collaboration will lead to a loss of identity?
Well, it's better to lose a little of your identity than lose your entire organization or your entire vision. And like I said, it's a little bit different up here. Miami is always kind of a crazy, fast-moving, on the upswing kind of town. It's a boom and bust town. So down there, people are a little less generous about the opportunity. Up here, it's been hard here for a long time, and hard times make people come together and work together. I'm trying to work on a couple of we're not allowed to call them mergers of organizations because then all the people in the organizations freak out, but some strategic alliances with organizations. And it is probably the most difficult thing I do. And I'll tell you my theory about why that is. My theory is that people that work in the arts have given up a lot to be there. They have decided not to work in a bank, not to work at a law firm because they love the arts and they're willing to get paid less, have less benefits, all those things. But with that, when the venture capital-driven philanthropist comes in and says, you ought to do it this way, you ought to do it that way, in business, people will do anything because the end result is more money. In the arts, they look at me and they go, we're not doing it that way. I go, what do you mean? I have the money. And they go, no, we're just not doing it that way. I've given up too much to be able to put myself in the opportunity to recognize my artistic vision. So when you're trying to seek a collaboration, you've got to make sure that there is an opportunity to, you don't have to collaborate on the art all the time. There's lots of other things. I don't know why there aren't more back office collaborations, for example. One of the most successful ones I've worked on is the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and the Greater Twin Cities Youth Orchestra. St. Paul Chamber Orchestra needed a lot more educational outreach, and Twin Cities needed the kind of sophistication that the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra did. I thought they were going to merge, but in fact it became this kind of administrative collaboration, and it's working beautifully, but they both work at it very, very hard.
Dennis, in the introduction for you, there was a mention of the National Initiative Arts Place. Could you explain what that is accomplishing and what role is Knight Foundation playing in it?
Sure. I'd hope to get to that, but Dan said when the clock hit 1, I'd turn into a pumpkin or something if I didn't finish. So, Art Place, it's perfect timing too, Mitch. Thank you for asking. Art Place is a collaborative. I did get a collaborative done, but it was all philanthropists. So, of the 12 largest arts funders in America, with the NEA and with the secretaries of the Treasury, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of HHS, among others. And what it is it's an opportunity to fund creative placemaking in America. If I asked everybody here where the next interesting, cool neighborhood was going to be in Cleveland, I bet you most of you could tell me where you think, this organic bubbling I'm always talking about is going on. Well, we want to find those neighborhoods, particularly those neighborhoods that are being driven by art and artists, and we want to fund that. We want to give people the seed money to continue to kind of improve those neighborhoods. Steve's here tonight. Steve and I are working on an independent cinema in Akron, and we were walking around yesterday, and he showed me the block. And it's a dream. It's like a great block. It's like a place where you can feel things are going to happen. So that's what Art Place is doing. The good news is, Mitch, your timing is perfect. Anybody can apply to Art Place. Everybody in this room should apply to Art Place. And the application period is open right now for another 2 or 3 weeks. artplaceamerica.org. If you've got a creative placemaking idea, this is the place to go because there's a lot of money involved. We've given away, I think, $45 or $50 million so far. It's our town on steroids, for those of you that know the NEA. Thanks, Mitch. I appreciate that.
I wondered whether an implication of your comment about SOBs and digital is usually they all start by saying, please turn off your cell phones, please do this, please do that. Are you suggesting that one way of being engaged is please turn them on, don't use the flash, but we ought to recognize that this should be part of this?
So how did we get the venues that we have? We celebrate these 100-year-old venues that we're in, but are they the right venues for us for our current lifestyle? And the answer is maybe not, It's a good example. Philadelphia Orchestra, one of our grantees, is doing tweet sections. You can sit in that section, and if you find something that inspires you, you can tweet. The Detroit Symphony Orchestra has been an amazing partner with us. They get 80,000 people to the hall every year, to Fisher Hall. This year, through their simulcast program, live simulcasting, not audio, video and audio, they've had over 240,000 people log in and watch for over a half hour. That creates constituency. It may be a little, it may not be the inner circle of your donors, but you've got all these layers of the onions as an art organization. It creates constituency. So these organizations have been slow to change. The League of American Orchestra will tell you that. Jesse's really worked hard, the guy that runs the league, but they've been slow to change, and the audiences don't want to go to the hall, sit there, know they have to be there at 8 o'clock on Saturday, sit there, and God forbid you should take out like a candy or a cough drop and crinkle it a little bit, So we don't have that kind of attention span anymore. I think it all started with MTV or Flashdance. I'm not sure which, but we refuse to connect that way anymore. So you've got to, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, your point's a good one. We've got to find a way to connect differently.
Connecting differently might also be something that you could do, interacting between, as Stanley said, the schools, but also with Apple, with iPads, and providing your experience on the iPad through videos of what you've done, and then that can be handed into different schools.
Well, I would look at the Google Museum project. Google has been going around to museums and taking pictures of everything that's up. And we have very antiquated intellectual property laws in this country, and what happens when you have an intellectual property law that doesn't make sense anymore? People ignore it, they don't respect it. It's what happened to the music industry. Okay? If there was a way to have music that made sense to people, then they would honor the law. And so it's a very difficult situation right now. People like organizations like Google, organizations like Apple, the iPad. I was looking again at the CMA today with the Gallery One and having an iPad there and to be able to just put it on there, throw everything in a basket. It's like a grocery store. You're like, I want to take home this Donald Judd. I like this Diebenkorn. I mean, that was great. It was so much fun to be able to do that. That's the kind of interactive experience people want, and somebody's going to provide it to them. And if it isn't the arts organizations, it will be somebody else, and that's what I fear more than anything else.
Mr. Scholl, I very much enjoy your expression, curate your own experience, which has a nice resonance with the word curator, and I think of that kind of person as someone who not only can help share art objects, but who knows a lot, can make connections, can make sense of things which might otherwise be hard to understand. Have you encountered, as you have encouraged people to adopt this very compelling metaphor, that you've also seen not only encounters, feelings, experiences, but the beginning of knowledge groups that grow out of some of these encounters, where you're not only going to have the immediate experience, but begin to build a knowledge structure on it?
Yeah, I have a two-part answer to that. The first part is when I talk about curating your own experience, remember, I am not asking artists to do anything other than create artistic excellence. We are not asking organizations to provide anything other than artistic excellence. I think that's very important. It's something we focus on a lot. But we are asking them to let the viewer, let the participant, let the audience have a chance to be impactful in their own way. Let them take something with them that they have been involved in. I mean, social media on its own is the be-all, end-all of your question. You know, you think about Facebook pages for organizations, you think about tweeting, you think about Foursquare and these kind of opportunities where people are connecting in a way that is something I've never understood. I didn't grow up this way. I grew up with the World Book. I mean, I think that was clear. So I think that, you know, I can just use social media as a proxy for the response. There are lots and lots of things going on where people are getting. Instagram is a beautiful example. You can create an incredible Instagram collection. You know, so those are the kinds of things that people are doing and sharing. And that's what's most important, is it being shared? And that's really the, you know, what you're driving at.
Dennis, thanks for joining us here at the City Club today. I wonder if you could talk a little bit. You have this unique perspective because you're sort of way up high, traveling all over the country, looking at arts organizations. And I wonder if you could speak specifically about the organizations that are filling the void that schools aren't able to provide, and which programs you've seen are most promising and most inspiring, give you the most hope for the future.
Sure. You know, when I was thinking about that, I was looking, and I was thinking about Art Place, for example. And, you know, there have been two successful Art Place applicants in Cleveland, the Collinwood Rising, which is talking about urban vacancy and foreclosure. And they got $500,000 to work with artists to establish development models for artists in, you know, in industrial cities like Cleveland. And then, what's my other one here? I had another one. I don't want to leave them out. Upcycle St. Clair, for their art-based strategy, lifting really their entire neighborhood through creative reuse. So it's not really about children per se or seniors per se. It's really about taking and letting artists lead. I have a feeling that this may be, everybody here I think cares about culture today. This might be our moment. You know, there's a lot of talk about the arts, but it's always kind of dessert or an hors d'oeuvre. This might just be our moment. Because mayors have tried to give away money to bring companies in from the county next door. They've done this, they've done that. But with Art Place, creative placemaking, you can see neighborhoods change dramatically through the efforts of artists. And mayors are starting to see that. And you know why they like it? Because it's inexpensive. Because artists are used to working inexpensively. Yeah, that's a knowing laugh in case you're not sure. So I honestly, one of the reasons I've hung in there and kept doing this, and I go around the country and I talk to people, is because it just might be our moment. And I'm excited about that. I think we can change things.
You mentioned that in order to strengthen boards in the future, that it'd be advisable to have young people on the board, 27-year-olds. To what extent do you think that in choosing board members, the financial strength of the prospective donor should be a criteria?
It should be a criteria, but in too many boards in this country of arts organizations, it is the criteria. And there's a difference between that. There are things that people can contribute to an arts organization board that aren't necessarily about funding. They are valuable, they are in kind, they are economic, But money isn't everything in these situations. I'm not advocating that a board should be comprised of people who don't contribute to the organization, but I'm simply saying that there are skill sets out there that can help more than money in certain situations.
Dennis, I appreciate all your focus, and it's heavily on institutions. I wanted to broaden the conversation to communities, and not just neighborhoods, but broader communities. Are there examples in the United States of communities where this attitude of inviting people to be interactive in your arts and involved and really engaged has really taken on as a community attitude benefit? And if so, where are they and what kind of characteristics do they have?
Sure. There's an issue because when some people talk about this, they're always thinking top down. This type of, I'll go back to my phrase, organic bubbling, it doesn't come from a mayor and a developer standing on a street corner with a rendering saying, here's the next arts district. The great thing about arts districts is that artists tell us where the arts districts are going to be. Mayors don't, developers don't, artists tell us that. And they are the front lines over and over again about going to neighborhoods because they don't have much money. They need a lot of space for studios and things like that. I think Miami, where I live, we have been having a moment like I could have never imagined having lived there 50 years. I don't think anybody thought of us as a cultural oasis up until maybe a little bit recently. And now we sit with a Frank Gehry building full of the New World Symphony. We have one of the best ballet companies in America. We have a brand new Herzog Numieron museum opening. We have a brand new science museum opening. These projects, everybody else shut down their projects from 2008 on. And this has all happened because the community thinks of themselves differently. The community thinks of themselves as a cultural place. And Miami, 115 years ago, was basically alligators and dirt roads. So it's, that's a big, big way to come in such a short period of time. And it's not about me saying it. The external third-party validation from Financial Times and The Economist and people coming to Miami and writing about it. And Art Basel has helped, I can't lie. The art fair has shined a bright light on our community. And we've actually responded, which is the hard part. Having a bright light on is fine, but you have to respond. And we have done that. We're famous for having the most Starkitect parking garages. Now, that's something that could only happen in Miami.
Okay. Dennis, thank you so much. There's always so much food for thought here. I want to go back to our organizations and that we have a charge to make it more engaged, to interact with everybody. But I also have to say that those of us who are in the presenting world, the artists that we present, they also have a charge. And so often I have seen with the Tuesday musical concerts, with the Fuse concerts, some of the artists are saying to the audience now, go ahead and tweet. I want you to send it out to all of your friends so that they can understand what's happening here. And as we have students at our concerts and everything, and so often that's one of the problems, that the young people don't come to a classical music concert or something. We just have to make this sense of freedom and sense of nothing being wrong any longer, unless they're not wearing clothes or something. Then that's wrong. But they have to have...
So you want me to tell Marina Abramovic that you don't like the piece? Okay.
I wouldn't go there. But I think that the performers also have to realize that as we partner with them, they have to partner with us, and they have to take that step also. So it's not only on our shoulders as organizations. So it's a two-way street there.
But, together we've solved that. I mean, in the idea of Tuesday Musical, what have we done? We've said to performers, we want you to come, we'll pay your fee, but we will also pay you extra to stay and have a master class, go to a school, things like that. That's our responsibility. In other words, their job is to go on the road and do as much as they can. I was fortunate enough, as we were talking, to be with Wynton Marsalis last week in Charlotte, and I watched him after his concert, in which he was out there for 2 hours and 15 minutes, spend another hour and 20 minutes just spending time with kids who want to learn to play, who are playing. And I asked him afterwards, I said, man, I said, do that every night? He goes, that's what I was put here to do. And so, you know, whether you're an artist or you're a presenter or you're a patron, because if you're a patron, you can demand that. You can ask for that. And that's another way, instead of arts education in schools, that's a great another way to expose people to, you know, to greatness.
Today at the City Club, we've been listening to a Friday Forum featuring Dennis Scholl, Vice President of Arts for the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. Thank you, Dennis, for being here and sharing with us today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This program is now adjourned.